Well, firstly, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone for taking the time out of your day to be here for my mid-candidature milestone presentation. My name is Ameer Nor Azhar, and I'm completing my PhD within the discipline of podiatry, School of Allied Health, Human Services and Sport at La Trobe. Again, just to echo Dan's sentiments earlier, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land that we're meeting upon today. Also paying my respect, to the elders past, present, and emerging. My thesis is titled The Development and Evaluation of Footwear to Optimize Balance and Mobility in Older Women. And just before the presentation begins officially, I'd just like to make a few acknowledgements. Firstly, to my supervisory team in Professor Hilton Menz, Professor Shannon Montague, and Dr. Sharon Bergen, my Progress Committee Chair in Professor Carl Landorf, and lastly to the industry partners who are also partially funding this project and providing half of the footwear for my trial. Firstly, to the companies in Ecna Labs, the Monroe Footwear Group, and Sierra, as we'll be using their products for our PhD or my PhD, and individually to Phil Hartshawn, Bevan Dam, and a quick mention to both Martin Pittman and Troy Wiltshire, as they work for the Monroe Footwear Group and have provided us with great insight into the footwear industry. So just a bit about me. I've been back here at La Trobe since late 2022. I've been here since that time point as a research assistant. And in that role, I've been lucky enough to be involved in multiple projects with one that's currently active. I've also been able to start my teaching career, leading podiatry classes to undergraduate students, and have also assisted in clinical supervision at the Student Podiatry Clinic since my return. I also work 1.5 sessions a week at a clinic in the north of Melbourne, and also the opportunity to start my PhD came about in early 2023, and I was lucky enough to commence and enroll into that degree in August of 2023. So, this slide briefly details my PhD timeline. As I previously mentioned in the last slide, I commenced my PhD in August of 2023. My confirmation was the 3rd of September of last year. My mid-candidature review is today, which is the 7th of October of 2025. My pre-submission milestone is being forecasted on the 28th of August of next year, with my expected submission in November of that year as well. I have a hard candidature expiry date of the 27th of August 2027 as well. So today's presentation will outline the background of my research area, as well as the 5 projects which we have planned for my candidature. Firstly, we have a scoping review, followed by a protocol and randomized crossover trial. We also have a qualitative study, and lastly, we'll also have a look at the key points over the last 12 months as well. So just some background on falls in older people, and more specifically in older women. Unfortunately, 1 in 3 older people, which can be defined as 65 years or older, will have a fall each year. And as our population grows older and the demographic makes up a large proportion of the general population, falls will pose a significant burden on our healthcare systems, both domestically and globally. Women as well will tend to have a high prevalence of falls compared to older men. And due to anatomical differences and age-related changes, such as menopause, older women are more likely to sustain significant injury as a result of falls compared to men. For example, older women are twice as likely to fracture their hip due to falling compared to older men. Now, in conjunction with older women having a greater intrinsic fear of falling compared to older men, it's important to address and mitigate the risk of falls in older women. So falls are multifactorial with a plethora of associated risk factors, mainly being decreased muscle strength, impaired gait, reduced eyesight, and sensory loss. It's just important to highlight that footwear is just only one factor in that equation. So whilst footwear is a modifiable factor that can influence balance performance and gait in older populations, specific characteristics of footwear have shown to influence balance, performance in both positively and negatively in older populations. We'll discuss the influence of those specific footwear features, though, a bit later on in the presentation. So today, there are 2 main approaches to footwear regarding balance and falls. The first being supportive balance-enhancing footwear, and the second in minimalist footwear. So while minimalist footwear has been found to be more effective for stability than conventional footwear, there's no evidence to suggest that minimalist footwear is more beneficial to balance enhancing footwear in a within session testing environment. So currently there is no definitive answer as to which approach is more beneficial to balance performance or falls risk in older women. So my first project was to conduct a scoping review. And the review was titled Footwear, Orthoses and Insoles and Their Effects on Balance in Older Adults, a scoping review. The paper was published in the Journal of Gerontology in June of last year. And the aim of the review was to identify and synthesize the current evidence examining the effects of footwear, orthoses, or insoles on balance in older adults, with a view to identifying which features in isolation or in combination exert the most positive impact. And this is where we will briefly outline and discuss which footwear features both impact and influence balance in older adults, both positively and negatively. So the review found that studies that investigated high-collared footwear found footwear with high collars to be more beneficial and improve balance in older adults. And again, much like the high-collared footwear, contoured or custom insoles, which can be essentially called foot orthoses, were also found to be beneficial for balance performance in older adults. Something to note, though, is that there is a dearth in evidence comparing prefabricated or custom orthoses and which type is more beneficial to balance performance in those older cohorts. So the next footwear characteristic is textured insoles. And currently there is no consensus definition for what constitutes as a textured insole, sorry. However, during the planning of this scoping review, the research team and I accepted that any insole that incorporated a protrusion or protrusions of any length of any texture was deemed a textured insole. Now, the scoping review showed that 8 studies reported positive outcomes when older adult participants wore textured insoles compared to other conditions. So while there may be some benefit in the addition of textured insoles in footwear, the optimum design of the placement and texture requires further investigation. Now, the review also showed that balance improved when older participants wore appropriately fitting footwear compared to ill-fitting footwear conditions, with one study also reporting that ill-fitting footwear increased knee and ankle joint variability while walking in older adults, which is important because that might be a risk factor for falling. The scoping review also found that heel elevation in footwear can be detrimental to balance performance in older adults, with the results reporting that footwear with an elevated heel impaired balance performance. And studies also show that older adults wearing high-heeled footwear employed a more conservative walking gait and also reported that pelvic acceleration in the medial-lateral direction was reduced compared to other footwear conditions, which might suggest a mechanical compensatory strategy to mitigate medial-lateral instability from heel elevation. So the second project was to develop a trial protocol. And this manuscript was submitted in the Journal of Foot and Ankle Research in August of this year. And the title for the paper was The Acceptability of Minimalist Shoes Compared with Balance-Enhancing Shoes in Older Women, a Protocol for a Randomized Crossover Trial. The aim for the project was to develop a protocol for a randomized crossover trial, which will evaluate the acceptability, perceived risk of falling, and balance performance of minimalist footwear compared to balance-enhancing footwear in older women. So the first footwear condition out of the two was the minimalist shoe. And the reason why we decided to include this minimalist shoe in the trial was that there's actually some evidence to suggest that these shoes, which can be defined as footwear providing minimal interference with the natural movement of the foot due to its high flexibility, low heel to toe drop, weight and stack height, and the absence of motion control and stability devices does influence balance performance in older adults positively. And moreover, evidence also suggests that minimalist footwear may be more beneficial to balance performance in older people compared to their own footwear. So for the trial itself, participants were provided with appropriately sized footwear from Kmart in the basic lace-up canvas shoe. And again, these were used as the control for the trial. So balance-enhancing shoes are shoes that have been designed to incorporate features that may have been previously shown to improve balance. Now, these features may include, but they're not limited to, a textured insole, adequate fixation, firm to hard density midsoles, and having a high collar cut. Now, the previous studies investigating balance enhancing footwear have only evaluated the immediate effects. So we're still unsure of the long-term outcomes from extended use of these types of shoes. For the trial, again, participants were provided with appropriately sized footwear from Ecnet Labs or Ziera in the Bala Balance leather lace-up boots, which include a variety of those balance enhancing features that we have previously outlined. Also, participants had the choice of two colorways in this balance enhancing shoe. The first color is obviously seen on screen in the black. However, there was a brown available too. A photo of both colorways will be shown a bit later on in the presentation though. So the trial followed a randomized crossover study design where participants were required to wear the two different types of footwear for 6 weeks in each condition. So as you guys can see on the flow chart, after randomization, if a participant was allocated to the balance enhancing group, they were required to wear that shoe for 6 weeks. And then after their 6-week follow-up, they were then crossing over into the minimalist shoe and vice versa for those participants who were randomized into the minimalist shoe first. Data was collected at baseline, 6 weeks and 12 weeks. And to be eligible for the trial, participants must have been able to identify as a woman, be aged older than 65 years or more, also be able to walk household distances, which is roughly 50 meters or more without the use of a walking aid, be free of any disease or condition which may interfere or impact with balance. So something like Parkinson's disease, also be free of any lower limb or partial foot amputation, and be free of any surgery to the foot or ankle in the past 12 months. So in total, we were able to recruit 44 participants using a patient mail-out list of the student-led podiatry clinic at La Trobe. And at baseline, we were able to collect demographic factors, medical conditions, perceived foot health, use of medication, and falls risk through a structured questionnaire. Footwear acceptance, perceived risk of falls, balance performance was also collected at baseline too. So for our primary outcome measure, we decided to choose the Monitor Orthopedic Shoes questionnaire. This was done as there is unfortunately an absence of a widely used outcome measure for footwear acceptability. As you can see on the screen, we have slightly modified the Monitor Orthopedic Shoes questionnaire. Originally, there are 5 domains which make up the outcome measure, being participants' perception of attractiveness to self and to others, comfort, fit, and ease of donning and doffing. However, the research team and I felt like those 5 parameters alone did not encompass footwear acceptance entirely. We felt strongly that participant perceptions on weight and durability were imperative too. Thus, we have decided to include those parameters into the Monitor Orthopedic Shoes questionnaire. So the MOSC itself will result in an average score across all 7 domains, and that value will be used to evaluate footwear acceptability in the trial. So for our secondary outcome measures, the first is perceived fear of falling or risk of falling. Now, fear of falling is an associated risk of falling in older people, and the Falls Efficacy Scale International Instrument is a validated and reliable way of capturing an individual's concern of falling. In total, it has 16 items on a 4-point scale. Now, the second secondary outcome measure is balance performance. And again, the research team and I felt it was important that this trial also objectively examined if balance performance was influenced by wearing either shoe condition for 6 weeks respectively. So the balance performance testing asked participants to walk over an uneven surface at their preferred pace, and the validated Geico sensor was able to measure linear and angular acceleration, as well as angular velocity in all 3 planes of motion simultaneously. The diagram on screen can sort of illustrate how that all works. So both the primary and secondary outcome measures were collected at week 6 and 12 time points. So for the other reported outcomes we had in the trial, we were able to collect self-reported adherence as well as the adherence objectively via an orthotimer sensor. The orthotimer is a validated wear time system we have embedded into both footwear conditions to determine the wear time of each shoe respectively. The sensor itself captures changes in temperature and will identify wear time as periods with increased temperature compared to baseline levels. And the photo on the right there, you can see we have the auth timer sensor sitting in a pre-cut cavity in the sock liner for the balance enhancing shoe. A similar system was used for the minimalist shoe as well. However, due to the minimalist shoe having no sock liner, we had to cut the cavity into the midsole of the shoe itself. For the trial, we also collected any adverse effects via a treatment report, and those were collected at 6 weeks and 12-week time points. Preference was also collected at the very end of the trial, where participants were asked if they had a preference for the minimalist or balance enhancing shoe, or if they had no preference at all. The credibility and expectancy questionnaire was also collected at baseline and 6 weeks, as that's a prospective outcome. And all data, inclusive of the outcome measures, apart from the balance performance testing, and objective adherence, was collected through the REDCap survey platform. So the third study or project was the randomized crossover trial itself. And the aim for the trial was to evaluate the acceptability, perceived risk of falling, and balance performance of minimalist footwear compared to balance enhancing footwear in older women. So for a current update on the trial, we had 41 participants complete the trial in totality. Unfortunately, we had 3 participants withdraw for various reasons prior to the randomization time point. Thankfully, though, we had no other participants withdraw after randomization, and no participants were lost to follow-up at all. In total, we were able to collect the objective adherence data from 40 participants. Unfortunately, we just had 1 participant who misplaced and lost the author timer embedded into her shoe at the time. Currently, though, we're in the midst of processing all the data and getting it ready for analysis. We're hoping to start the analysis process at the beginning of November. As you can see, we have all 44 pairs that we originally ordered, and there was a good mix of participants who decided to opt for the black or brown pair. And as you can see, they're all stacked up against their various sizes. So again, we had quite a good range of sizes. So this was our planned trial timeline as of last year. We anticipated we would have ethics approved by October of last year, with a protocol submitted by early 2025. We also anticipated to start and finish data collection between February and October of this year, with data analysis to finish early next year, with a submitted manuscript ready to go by the middle of next year. And this is what the trial timeline is today, as it stands, We had ethics approved earlier this year in January. We started data collection in February. However, our protocol submission was a bit later than anticipated in August of this year. Data collection, though, thankfully finished last week. And again, we're still aiming towards having our data analysis completed by early 2026, with the manuscript finished by the middle of next year as well. So our last project for the PhD will be a qualitative study, and the title of this project will be Exploring the Lived Experience of Women aged 65 years or older wearing balance-enhancing outdoor shoes, qualitative study. The aim of this project looks to explore the lived experience of older women who have previously worn balance-enhancing shoes to better understand their perspectives on balance-enhancing shoe usability, wearability, and design. We're hoping the insights gained from this study may inform further research on balance-enhancing outdoor shoes and guide future footwear design, leading to improvements in acceptability. So the study will follow a phenomenological approach, as this best underpins our aims for this research project. We have employed a purposive sampling method where we have recruited participants from the participant list of the previous randomized crossover trial. This was done to ensure that all participants for the focus groups have had at least some experience wearing the balance-enhancing shoes. We will look to recruit 10 initial participants and conduct 2 focus groups, where each focus groups will have 5 participants. However, data saturation will dictate if any additional focus groups are required. And again, this is the study timeline as it stands. We had ethics approved in September. We've started participant recruitment this month. We're looking to complete data collection in the month of November. And again, much like the trial paper, we're looking to have data analysis completed by early next year, with a manuscript ready to go for publication in the middle of next year as well. So I'd just like to discuss some key points over the last 12 months as well. So for those of you who came to my confirmation presentation last year, you might notice that there was a big change in regards to our projects for the PhD. Earlier this year, we faced some delays with the Human Research Ethics Committee regarding our ethics application for the originally planned second randomized crossover trial, which would have focused on indoor footwear. And on top of this setback as well, it also became clear that our industry partner wasn't going to be able to provide the balance enhancing indoor footwear within a reasonable time frame within the context of the remaining time I have left in my candidature. So this is where I say thanks to my great supervisory team and their creative efforts, as it was decided that we would drop the indoor footwear trial and substitute that project with the qualitative study I previously discussed. The opportunity to still conduct research on balance enhancing indoor footwear still remains open. However, that will likely be an endeavour we pursue post-PhD. Ultimately, though, this decision was beyond our control, and upon reflection, I think it might be the better outcome within the context of my PhD. I believe that with the inclusion of this qualitative study we are conducting, my thesis will become a more rounded one, covering more aspects of footwear acceptability and better answers the second part of my thesis title, which is to evaluate the footwear. In terms of highlights, I've been fortunate enough now to have had the opportunity to present my research a handful of times over the past year. I'm also very happy to announce and let you guys know that we've been able to complete the data collection for the randomized crossover trial, and hopefully the focus group data collection will be finished by the end of next month as well. So here is the overall timeline for my PhD studies. We're currently working towards my thesis submission date, lining up with the expected submission date the university has forecasted. However, we're still being extremely realistic and understand that delays are possible and probably expected along the journey, which may alter these dates in the Gantt chart. This is the same Gantt chart, but it's just a bit truncated, so hopefully everyone can see the last 18 months of my candidature a bit more clearly. I'll just discuss the foreseeable risks pertaining to the remainder of my PhD now as well. So firstly, in regards to participant retention, we're not really expecting any issues with participant retention anymore, primarily due to the fact that participant or data collection, for the crossover trial is now complete. And that was the project with the most amount of engagement and follow-up for a participant. However, those participants who now want to partake in the qualitative study will have very minimal follow-up for that project. Furthermore, those participants in the qualitative study will also be incentivized as they have or will receive, one free appointment at the student-led podiatry clinic. Financially, there are some burdens financially associated with the qualitative study due to transcription services being required. We anticipate that each focus group will cost roughly $250 to transcribe. We're going to look to absorb these costs or fund these costs via my HDR grants for my PhD. Externally, though, regarding conflict of interest, myself and my supervisory team, as well as ECNA Labs, have had some input with the design of the projects. However, ECNA Labs have had no input in the recruitment, data collection, data analysis, or manuscript submission of any projects within my PhD. There's also the risk that I unfortunately run out of time within my candidature and unable to publish both remaining studies as well as my thesis before my expiry date. However, I'll look to mitigate this risk as I intend to prioritize all my energy and time into my PhD for the next 14 months, and will likely have minimal teaching, non-PhD related research and external work engagements. These are the references that I've used for my presentation today. And that's the end of my presentation. So thank you all for your time this morning. I'm now open to any questions. Thank you.